Oi. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Oh, I didn't do that. 1 second. Okay, sorry. I'm back. Seems like nobody's here anyway, but hello. I'm just gonna erase some stuff. SAT, ACT tutoring, all that. I hope I'm live. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I messed something up. No. I think we're good. Okay. There we go, that took long enough. Ask your questions, make your comments, voice your concerns, all of the above. Who was that? Forget who that was. Luo maybe said last night that they wanted me to go over the, a specific essay from the SAT prompts, but didn't send me that, so I need to have that. And I can't do it tonight anyway, because it's just me again. Might just be talking to no one. That's a distinct possibility, which is fine, if a little bit embarrassing. Oh, what do we got? Oh, I'm live. Just nobody's watching? Maybe? We got one whole viewer, and it might be me. Very good. We're gonna do... Oh, oops. Hi, Tile. What's up? Thank you for joining. I would say us, but it's just me. And it's also maybe just you. So, what do you want to know? What stuff do you want to know? We got... I was going to do one of maybe Vix's questions, which I'd have to find. Hey, Luo. Luo, was it you who wanted the SAT essay thing? And then I asked you to send me yours or one or something like that? If it wasn't, then ignore me. But otherwise, send me that in Discord as a PM. Yeah, just PM it to me or PM me something. We can talk about it. I can't do it tonight anyway because I'm the only one here again. But we can get that done. Is Vix here? Thank you. Is Vix here? Anybody? Vix, are you here? Vix is always a couple minutes late. So I'm going to ignore that. I have Encryption's question. Got iCrush's grape stuff. More Vix questions. Oh, Luo, I think maybe I could do this one. Okay, yeah, Luo, I'm going to do this question that you sent yesterday, since Vix isn't here. Vix, when you get here, you won't see this anyway. Never mind. Okay. So, we have the specific gravity of a substance. Ooh, you have some grammar questions. Okay. You want to do that instead? Because I don't want to do this. Just let me know. Tile, if you have no questions, that's fine. But then how are you doing? What's going on? Good. I'm glad you're doing well. Where is everybody? I don't know. This is only the second. This is the first night that I have streamed when I also streamed when we also streamed the night before in the last month almost, not that long, but I think it's been about 3 weeks, so we kind of just fell off the map for a while because of internet. So people aren't coming as regularly anymore, I guess. It's also a Monday. I don't know. How is the stream, by the way? Is it fine? Are we lagging? What happened with Spectrum? Well, we paid them more money, and then it didn't help. Apparently, there's one of their nodes that was near us, the one that we get our internet from, that is down, maybe currently still, I don't know. And they've been this whole time trying to get that thing back up and running, but it was somewhere where they weren't allowed to go anymore, so they had to get a permit to go, and it took them a while. Not that they told us. They sort of told us that, and then told us it got fixed 3 different times. So who knows? Oh, Luo's internet is slow. Okay. Yeah, that stinks, dude. I know how that feels. Yeah, it's capitalism, and it is unchecked capitalism that has turned into a monopoly, which is not good for anybody in the long run, but especially us right now. But yeah, it's great for Spectrum. I think Charter bought Spectrum. Charter is the parent company now. Bought Spectrum for $98 billion. Something like that. So they spent probably too much money on it, and then they just focus on getting money out of the consumers and not actually giving them a good service because there's no competition in my area. No, Spectrum is not a perfect monopoly. No. But in my area, it is a full monopoly, even though they're getting sued by the government. Which is another reason why they have no interest in helping. Okay. Ooh, there we go. Luo got some questions. Oh boy. All right. For example, in contrast, nevertheless, and what is no change here? Whoa. This is in the Discord, for those of you who don't know. Hey, Yes Money, what's up? I feel like we agreed on me answering one of your questions or something, and then I didn't do it, or I forget what happened last night. But if you have questions, ask them. Okay, so I'm doing Luo's question, just put it in the Discord, and this, I don't even know what question number this is. 15, maybe? 15. Okay. So 15, we have options. We have, in general terms, I'm going to go about this question just as a general approach, more so than really trying to solve it at first. See if that can't get us there quicker. For example, in contrast, nevertheless. For example, if this is too squeaky, let me know. In contrast, and nevertheless. Nevertheless. Okay, good. I'm glad. Oh, gosh. Can you see that? That's pretty bad. This is worthless. Okay. Hey, Vix. We're doing your question next. From last night. Wow, that's really, really... Okay, this is worthless. Getting a new pink. Okay, we'll see if this works any better. Maybe not. Okay. With these questions, these are transition questions. You don't have to do this. For the easy ones, you don't have to do this. For the hard ones, you really, really should do this. And therefore, for all of them, you should do this. When you realize that this is the type of question you're dealing with, a transition question, you need to identify the two ideas that you're connecting every single time. And we know how to use these. So let's talk about these very generally and how we would use them. In general terms, that means if we have idea 1 over here, we have idea 2 over here, and then we're going to connect them somehow. In general terms, would require us to say, here's something pretty specific, and then here's something very general, and we're generalizing this first idea, right? And then, for example, is sort of the opposite. Here's the more general idea and the setup, and then here's an example of that thing. So those are pretty different, but easy to confuse. Then in contrast shows contrast, and then nevertheless is similar to contrast. So these two, A and B, are basically when these two ideas are pretty similar and they agree with each other, very generally they agree with each other. These two are contrast, they're disagreement. When you say in contrast, they're generally on the same level. Nevertheless means despite, that type of thing, and you probably know that. So let's identify our two ideas. Oh my goodness, this is quite a lot of writing. Okay. For this purpose, planned obsolescence is a natural selection of new and emerging technologies. Okay. So we have planned obsolescence here, and it's a natural extension of new and emerging technologies. So hopefully they defined planned obsolescence earlier. Anyway, that's our first idea. Planned obsolescence, natural extension, new emerging technologies. Something as our transition, and then who is going to cling to an enormous and slow desktop computer from 2000 when a few $100s can repair its outdated operating system? Okay, so that to me looks like general to specific, which you put B, didn't you? Oh no, you put A. Got it. Okay, yeah. So that looks like general to specific. We have these bigger terms like planned obsolescence. I'm not going to write that whole thing. We have, and that's natural evolution? Extension. Natural extension. And then technology. So those are all very, very big ideas. Technology, yes. And then number 2 is saying we have blank. Who would hold on to the 2000 desktop? Okay, so I'm taking a long time through this question, but I hope I've made it very clear. And when you identify your two ideas that you're connecting, it becomes very, very obvious what you should do to connect them. It's definitely not going to be in general terms because you're going from something general to something very specific about a specific desktop from 2000 that you could just replace with $100. So it's very specific here. So going from general to specific, I would say, for example. Now, in contrast and nevertheless don't work, assuming that you know what planned obsolescence is, and that's when they make something that is basically useless 10 years later or something like that. So knowing that, these two ideas are saying the same thing, just this one is this one is general, this one is specific. So these two don't work because they're showing contrast. These two ideas do not contrast with each other. And then in general terms is going in the wrong direction. Does that make sense, Luo? Every time I want to demonstrate to you how clear these questions can be and how clear your approach and understanding can be. But it's not because I just know it and then I make it clear after the fact. I know it because I make it clear. I didn't know the answer to this question, but I know how to approach this question very, very, very well. And I get tired of it sometimes, but not that tired because it's kind of fun. The approach has to be identify the question type, which we did. It's a transition question. Then when you have transition questions, you identify your two ideas. This can be a little tricky, but once you've done that, it brings you back to the answers very quickly. Does that make sense, Luo? Can you please tell me yes or no or something in between? But I don't want it to seem like you send me a question in this black box and then I pop it out and make it seem like it's easy. I don't want it to be that way. The approach is the part that you need to work on. Yeah, it does. So if it's going from general to specific, I should find the most specific connecting word. No, that's not exactly what I mean. So I mean that in this case, the first idea that we have, the previous sentence in this case, is planned obsolescence is a natural extension of new and emerging technologies, that type of thing. That's a bigger idea. And then they say blank who, and then they ask a question that's a rhetorical question. Who would want a desktop from 2000 when you could spend a couple $100s to just get the next iteration of that and make it even better? But that's very specific. So it's in this case we're going from general to specific, so that works with for example. Now, if the first idea is this one, and then the second idea is blank, consumers actually are harmed by planned obsolescence because something, 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 it would point more towards one of these because we're saying that planned obsolescence is a natural extension. So this is a generally positive thing. And then the next one is negative. So that's, people are hurt by planned obsolescence. So in that case, you would do something with a contrast between the two ideas. So the specificity in this case works for example. That's that transition specifically is not really about disagreement at all. It's about agreement, but then in this case, so is A. These are both, your ideas are agreeing with each other. They're saying similar things, but they're going in opposite directions. Yes, good. Oh, very good. Vix, we're going to do your question. Wow, that pink was just terrible. Ooh. Okay. Vix, I'm going to do that question, the very last question you put yesterday in the Discord, which was the absolute value one. And I can generalize for absolute value pretty quick for everybody. Let's see, who's here? Yes, Money, are you still here? And how are you? And do you have more questions? Because you should ask more questions. You're here, Tile. Yes. You need, I'm glad the stream is good, and what else do you want to know aside from Spectrum being monopoly? I forget the definition of a perfect monopoly, but I don't think it's a perfect monopoly. Because there are definitely competitors also, just not on my block. Oh, you put a pre-calc question earlier because no one was here. Oh, you did? Okay, sorry. Let me check that out. Vix, I might have to put you off if Tile put this where I didn't see it for whatever reason. Jerry, what's up, Jerry? Wow. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I did just miss that. What? Oh, I see. Okay, Tile. Your question. Lou, I sort of remember that question. Is that one of the ones that you posted? Because we can go over that. I haven't done that one in a while, so I need to be refreshed on exactly what the sentence was. Tile, you have sine of x plus y, and it wants the exact value of that. That's what the question says, so I don't know. Because, x minus y. Yeah, either way, I don't have any idea what I'm supposed to do here, because if it's asking for an exact value, like a numerical value, I don't know, because it's we have two variables here, so I don't. Meh. Unless you're looking for the definition, the identity of this or whatever, and it becomes sine of something and something else. Although I forget what those are, because they're not on the test. Oh, you think it's the definition? I could maybe prove it to you if you told me what the definition is, if you just Google that, or the identity. I don't actually know. Either way, it's not on the test. So I'm gonna not spend too much time on that. Sorry. I also don't know it, to come clean. Don't know those things off the top of my head. Okay, 2x plus 1 absolute value. A and B are the solutions to the equation above. What is the value of A and B? Okay, so A and B are solutions. So that's step one. We need to find what A and B are, and that just means solve for x. What value of x satisfies this equation, and then those values are A and B, and then they just want us to find A minus B, the absolute value of that. Okay. Vix, push me forward if you already know about absolute value and how to do that. Otherwise, that's where I'm going to start. I can skip to the next part if that was the issue. Sorry, I don't know. What's happening? Sorry, I don't even know what you're responding to now because I forget my question. Are you saying that you don't need to work on absolute value, or you do need to work on absolute value? Use a full sentence because I forget my questions immediately. And then, oh my gosh, Luo. I appreciate all the questions. You need to work on absolute value. Very good. Okay. Absolute value. The way I try to think of it now, that I have to teach it, is you have 0 here. So absolute value is the distance of any number, let's say 3, and let's say -3. It's the distance from this number to 0. So it's that whole thing. That's 3. So the absolute value of negative 3 is 3, and the absolute value of 3 is also 3. Yeah? Okay, so that's fine. Now, when you are solving equations, here's what you're supposed to do. Think of it this way. The absolute value of 2x plus 1 equals 5. It has to be positive. It can't equal negative 5 because you're taking the absolute value, so it always has to be a magnitude. It always has to be positive. So what that means is that if you have just 2x plus 1, it could be 5, right? Just like saying the absolute, if we're here and we say the absolute value of x equals 3, we know that x could be 3 or negative 3, yeah? So in this case, we know that 2x plus 1 could be 5, or 2x plus 1 equals negative 5. Because if you put this negative 5 here instead of 2x plus 1, you get the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. That's the approach here. Absolute value, and it has to be alone. So if you have 1 minus that, you can't say 1 minus this and 1 minus this equals 5 and negative 5. You have to get the absolute value by itself, or have one side of the equation entirely inside the absolute value. Okay? So you're here. So what I'm saying with that is if you have, let's say you had 2x plus 1 equals 5, you want to divide by 3 on both sides first, and then set what's inside here equal to the positive and negative of this one. Okay? Now we're here. So please let me know if that didn't make sense. Now we're here, and now we just solve these equations separately but normally. So this is going to be 2x equals 4 and x equals 2. So that's one answer. And then here we have 2x equals negative 6. Be careful of your negatives because it gets confusing. X equals negative 3. Now we know a minus b. So this one we're going to call a, and this one we're going to call b. That means that we have 2 minus negative 3. And what does that equal? Well, 2 minus negative 3 is negative... No, it's not. Oh, my goodness. It's 5. Oh, my gosh. So this equals 5. There we go. Now, I did not forget this thing. I just said that this one is a. A equals 2 and b equals negative 3. I could have done it the other way. I could have said that this is a, or this is a and this is b, and then we'd have the absolute value of, what would it be? So absolute value of negative 3 minus 2, right? This would be if this one were b and this one were a. But this is going to be negative 3 minus 2, which is negative 5. The absolute value of that is 5. So it actually doesn't matter in this case. And that's the thing. When you take the absolute value of a difference, it's always going to be, it doesn't matter which one you're subtracting first. But that's not super important. It's an interesting thing, and it might help you conceptualize some other parts of math, but it's not that important for this question. The idea is when you see absolute value, you isolate the whole absolute value term, everything else on the other side of the equation, and then you set everything inside it equal to the positive and equal to the negative. Does that work for you? Are you happy, Vix? Also, does that make sense to everybody else who may or may not have had an issue with this before? Okay, good. I'm glad it does. And then we can get to some of Luo's giant, massive questions, or somebody else can ask questions. It is generally a, first come, first serve thing, but also if somebody asks a ton of questions, I'm happy to fit other people in because I want everybody to get their questions answered. Oh, darn it. I used the wrong rag. Not that you guys care. Or should it? You should not care. Kyle, because I'm curious, what is the identity of that one? Or somebody else who's watching, if you are, sine of x minus y, what does that become? Is it one of those like 2 cosine of x, sine of x things or something like that? Though I feel like it's not one, but I could very much be wrong. I think very possibly that Brady will be streaming alone tomorrow night for a couple of reasons. I really hate not streaming. It's no fun. I don't know if you'll believe me, but streaming is actually my favorite form of tutoring. I do like it in general more than one-on-one. Not because I hate people, but it just feels like I'm helping more, maybe? But I might not be. I don't know. Just rationalizing my decisions to spend my time doing this. Why is Jerry saying hello? What's happening? Oh, oops. What is that? Oh my gosh. Okay. Luo, since nobody else is asking a question, I will do a Luo question, and I'm going to try to find the one that you've been talking about. Yes, here we go. Oh, this one. Okay, I am going to shorten this sentence for brevity. Okay. Luo. Good. I'm glad you appreciate it. I really enjoy it, so it's good that you like it. Okay, so this is hard. It's very hard. So where does this sentence start? They then did significantly. Okay. She found that students who were required to volunteer rushed to complete their service hours in early high school. They then did significantly less. Okay, what is the answer to 19? Because that might help. I think 19 should be a full stop, and then we say they did less regular volunteer work in the 12th grade. Okay. They did less work in the 12th grade blank not required to volunteer. Okay, this is a hard question, and I don't want to write out all the answers, but I probably should. Then the service hours of those. I apologize this is taking so long. Then did students who were, as B, then did students who were, then hours worked by students. I immediately don't like that one. Then hours worked by students. I'm almost done. Also, if any of you have Amazon Prime and you haven't already done this, it would be great if you could subscribe to us or anybody else. It's free if you have Amazon Prime. And we make $2.32, which is very exciting compared with students. Okay, so this is a comparison thing. They did less work. They did less work in the 12th grade. And you know what? I'm just gonna erase this because it's unhelpful. It doesn't matter, and it's just gonna bloat our sentence a little bit too much. They did less work than the service hours of those not required to volunteer. Okay. When you are making a comparison with the word than, well, we have, I should use another color. Ooh, yellow. I haven't done that. We have less work. You do less than something else. You do not do less compared to something else. You do less than something else. You can say, I do less work. You could maybe say I do less work when compared, but that's a whole different thing. So it's got to be less than. So compared, just idiomatically, essentially idiomatically. So I apologize for the many of you whose first language is not English. You cannot say less, less work compared with something. You can't say more work compared with something. You have to say less than and more than. Now, we have than in these, so we're good. That's nice. But now the two things that we compare have to... Ooh, that sounded bad. Okay. The two things we're comparing, this is sort of like the last one. You have these two things. They have to run parallel to each other. And what I mean by that is you can't compare... I think I've used this analogy before. I like brownies more than Brendan does. Or let's say more than him. I like, let's say food. Food more than him or he. You might think that you shouldn't end a sentence with the word he, but actually he is correct. Because if you say well, it depends on what you're trying to say. But let's say that you're saying that, I like food and he likes food, but I like it more. You have to say I like food more than he, because the does is implied. You can say I like food more than he does. But if you say I like food more than him, then the comparison, which is right here, it's going to compare the two things that run parallel grammatically, which in this case, if you were to say him, the objects are him and food. But you don't want to say that. You're not trying to say that you like food more than you like him, right? That's what this says if you choose him. I like food more than him. That's like saying I like food more than water. Or I like brownies more than cookies. I like brownies more than him. That's comparing those two objects. If you don't use him and you use he, which is what you probably should be saying in this case, it's I like food more than he. So then you're not talking about food anymore. You're not saying you like food more than you like something else. You are now comparing he, which is a subject, and I, which is a subject. So you're comparing your like of food and his like of food. Does that make sense? Because that's very different. Oh boy, I don't know who that is saying yay because your name is black on my chat. Maybe on everybody's, I don't know. But I genuinely don't know who you are. So, hello, welcome. If you write your name, I can see it. Kids and TV, what's up? I got this one right, and I thought it was parallelism. It is. It is. Comparisons need to be parallel. So, in this one, we're saying they did less work, in this case, than the service hours of those not required to volunteer. This is weird, because you're saying the comparison doesn't work, because then the service hours, so this is the thing that you're comparing, right, because it's coming after than, and you have to compare it to the same part of speech, which is work. So you're comparing work to service hours, which doesn't work, which doesn't make sense. You're not trying to do that. You're trying to say that these people did less work than the people who were not required to volunteer. That is conceptually what you're trying to say. This doesn't say that. So A is wrong. Then B. Let's do B. This, unfortunately, is a weird turn of phrase. I don't like the way they did this question because I think it makes it unnecessarily hard, mainly for non-native English speakers. It's because of this inversion here. But this is the correct comparison. It's saying they did less work than did students who were not required to volunteer. It's oddly worded, but it's an idiomatic way of saying this. You could also say they did less work than did the students, or than the students who were not required to volunteer did. But they just put the did all the way at the beginning. It is a way that you are allowed to say this. Sorry. And then C is they did less work than hours worked by students. This is the same problem as an A. I recommend not trying to memorize this because this is not a nice rule. This is a little bit clearer. I remember it as brownies and Brendan, actually. I like brownies more than with him. I like brownies more than him. Means I like brownies more than I like him, which is not what you want to say. Okay, does this make sense, Luo, and everybody else? And Kizin, who said that in chat? I genuinely can't read your name, and I don't think I can check it on my phone because I don't have the chat pulled up on my phone. Sorry. Kizin, oh, nice, we have a question. Oh, I like this question, I think. Okay. Can somebody else tell me who commented right before Kizin? And if their name is Black for you too? I don't really have to know, but it would be nice. Good. I'm glad it helped, Luo. Or it makes sense at least. Yes, just be very careful with comparisons. And always, so the test, you feel like the basic grammar things that you don't have to think about in school very often are the ones that you don't have to pay attention to on the test, and that is very simply not the case. They are testing you on a specific rule about the English language every single time. So if you know what they're testing you on, that's awesome. But you actually have to pay attention to that thing. So this is one of them. It's not that common, but they do comparison questions. When there's a comparison, they are going to make it difficult for you if you're not paying enough attention. Oh, it's Fluffy Nelson. Hey, Fluffy Nelson. Sorry, I didn't know that was you. So that is why it's so important to identify question types and then eliminate answers. You are pointing your gut feeling, which is probably pretty good for most of you at this point. You're pointing your gut feeling about the English language at something very specific. There's no point in not being specific with it because it slows you down and it makes you more susceptible to simple mistakes. So although it might sound like I'm just another tutor or teacher or whatever saying you need to focus and know exactly what you're being asked, it makes it way better. You will be way better at this test. And also, you're not paying me, so like I'm not, I'm not making it up for any reason. Okay. Now we have Kizin's question, and then maybe we'll do another Luo question if somebody else doesn't give me a question before that. I think I remember this question. Okay, it's not very nice, but whatever. We have 4, 0 here, and we have 20, 0 here, H and K, which is the common way of identifying the center of a circle. Okay, XY plane, I'm not going to label it. The XY plane above, in the XY plane above, the circle has center HK and radius of 10. So R equals 10. What is the value of K? So we're just trying to find what K equals. Okay, so this is one of those questions where they've given you some stuff and they gave you where to go, but you're not told, okay, solve for X, which you've done so many times that you kind of just know what to do, generally. We have a bit of a gap. We know we need to find K, which is right here. So we need to find the center of the circle. K is the Y value. So it's pretty easy to find H, right? If they asked for H, you just find the center of those two things. But that's not going to help us. That was my first thought. But what I want to... Here's the approach for questions like this, where they draw a circle for you, or even if they don't. If it's a circle question, and you're given the radius, and even if you're not, draw in radii. Maybe 1, maybe 2, might not matter, but at least 1, and draw it to points that matter on the edge of the circle. So put your pencil here, and you draw it to points that matter, and then you label your radius as that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to draw 1 and see if that's enough. And I'm going to label it with a 10. That's pretty interesting, because circles are pretty easy. You know, there aren't that many things going on with circles that you have to know for this test. And the other shape and the main polygon that you need to think about for most geometry questions is triangles. It's the most basic polygon because you can't have a smaller one or one with fewer sides. So I'm going to draw in this line. Now, I don't know the length of that line, but I do know that it's at a right angle here. And I know that it's also going to be equidistant from that side to that side, right? Because if you're going straight down the center of the circle and this line is perpendicular to that chord, you're going to be cutting that chord, you're going to be bisecting that chord. Yes, exactly, Kizin. Pythagorean theorem. So I'm sure you clearly know Pythagorean theorem. I know that you know how to label a radius. The approach to this type of question, when you get a circle and you don't have stuff inside of it, is drawing radii to important points on the circle. Don't draw one to here. Maybe you think, okay, well, I want a right angle, so I should draw a radius there. Maybe, and you can try that, but generally it's best to draw them to points on the circle that matter. This point doesn't matter so much. This one does. You could do it there too. Now from here, we know that this is 4 to 20, so that's 16, so this is 8, and this is a blown up 3, 4, 5 triangle, so this is going to be 6. So therefore, if that's 6, then this is 6, right? Because it's just across. So k equals 6. There you go. Does that approach make sense? The approach is super important. That's why I always want to talk about it. And I don't have Brendan and Brady here saying get on with it, so I get to just keep saying it. Good. I'm glad that helped. Keep that in your head. When you see circles on this test, draw in radii. That's what they're testing you on. How did I get 8? Oh, okay. So that was just a little quick thing, but we had 10 and 8. Oh, how did I get 8? Sorry. 8 is just halfway between. So we know that, let's do this. Yeah, distance from it's the midpoint. So from here, that distance and that distance were the same, because if you have any circle and you just draw any chord through it like that, if you were to take a radius that goes straight through and hits at a 90-degree angle, there's a theorem that I don't really want to prove, but you can kind of see that it works, that if you draw a radius through that and it's at a right angle, it will bisect that chord. 24. It's not 24. So this point is at 4, 0, and this point is at 20, 0, so the difference between them is 16. Okay. Let's see. Does that make sense? Lamau boy? I hate saying Lamau. I don't know why I hate saying Lamau. I prefer LMAO. But maybe I'm just too old for Lamau. Reminds me of a cat. Like Lamiao. Like a French cat. One of those hairless French cats. I don't think they're French. Yeah, we can. Let's do that. And then, well, let me just check if there are any questions in the Discord that are non-Luo questions at the moment. And then Luo, we will get to you. Don't you worry. Use distance formula. Wait, so Luo, are you telling Lamau boy to use distance formula for midpoint theorem? Because no. But we can talk about distance formula too. I would love to talk about distance formula. If anybody wants to talk about distance formula, if that's what you're saying, Luo, or anybody else, let's definitely do that, because I like talking about it. Another Luo. Okay. So let's do... What is this? I'm just interested in Luo's question here. Oh, that looks fun. Okay, maybe we'll do that. But let's do Lamau boy's thing. So midpoint theorem. Midpoint theorem is actually just the best thing to do with this is to do it visually, and then you won't forget it. I don't like telling people to memorize formulas, although that's great, and maybe this soon before the test if you're taking it in a week or two. The best course of action is to memorize it, but I'm just going to teach the whole thing. So if we have this point and it's at x1, y1, so that means that this value here is going to be x1, right? No, I don't want to do it that way. Let's just do it with actual numbers, because we're not needing to prove anything here. 3, 2 is this point. 3, 2. And then we have this point, let's say it's 7 and 3. Ooh, survey questions. Okay, so we're going to do midpoint formula, and then I'll do Luo's question, and then we can do surveys. So Luo, and then survey. Luo, tell me if you want me to do the question you just posted in the Discord, or you want me to talk about distance formula specifically. Okay, now for this, we're trying to find the midpoint, which is going to be that point. We just need to figure it out. And we can probably eyeball it very easily here, but that's actually what I want to do. So let's think about the x value of this point. It's got to be halfway between 3 and 7, right? So 5. And this has to be halfway between 2 and 3, which is 2.5. So our midpoint is going to be 5, 2.5. We solved for the x and the y values separately. They don't actually affect each other. You're doing halfway between the x values and halfway between the y values. So the way to find halfway between two values, okay, I will do that, Luo, great. Halfway between two values, if you have 3 and 7, if you take the average of two numbers, it will give you the middle number, or the number that is the midpoint between them, which makes sense, right? What is the average of 10 and 10? It's 10. What is the average of 10 and 11? Well, it would be 10.5. So average of two numbers is the midpoint of those two numbers. So the formula is going to be, or in this case, it would be 3 plus 7 over 2, right? Because you're dividing by the total number. You can remember this is just 2, but I remember as the average of those 2 points. So it's going to be, if you have these numbers x1, or these coordinate pairs x, x1, y1, and x2, y2, you're going to get, for the x values, you're going to take the x values and you're going to add them up and divide by 2. And then for the y, you're going to add them up and divide by 2. So here is what the midpoint looks like. That is the coordinate pair for the midpoint. It's the average of just the x's and the average of just the y's. Got it, Luo. Okay. So now we're going to do the Luo question. Leave that up. If you have more survey questions that you can post, that would be great. They are not like the other math questions, so don't treat them as such. They are their own thing. So they are like the math ones in that you need to realize that that's the type of question you're dealing with at the moment. But then after that, it's very much a logic thing. So you have to pick out the information that's relevant, and then you have to pick out the answer that deals with that relevant information. That was probably very vague and maybe didn't help you at all. But give me a question. We'll do it. I want to read this real quick. I don't want my phone to break right now. That would be annoying. What? Oh, right. What? Goldilocks here. Hey, okay, that's interesting. But irrelevant right now. Okay, we're going to do Luo's question, then we're going to do... Sorry, I don't know how long I was just staring at my phone there. I apologize. I note some note from College Panda. I will post that note in Discord. What? If you're going to post a question in Discord, yeah, go for it. I just didn't understand what you said there. Okay, so this looks fun, Luo. I like this question. Thank you for posting it. Check this out because it's going to take me a minute to draw it. So if you want to check Luo's most recent question, it's a little pinwheel looking circle question. And I have no idea how to do it, so we're going to give it a shot. Okay. So I don't want to draw this that much. Oy. That was a pretty good circle. Pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. Okay. Eh. And that's a right angle. And we have another right angle here. And then that's also a right angle. Lovely. So this is the radius. In the figure above, point O is the center of the circle. Whatever. And R is the radius. Great. If the total shaded area is 64 pi, what is the value of R? Okay, so that, ooh, I like this a lot. A lot. Okay. Area shaded, oops, equals 64 pi. What is the total area? Sector area stuff. When you see sectors and it has to do with areas of sectors, or you see sectors and it has to do with the arc length of the ends of those sectors, it's probably going to be proportions because they help you out a lot. Now it's super important to look, they gave you all of the information that is necessary here. And the most important and the only information you have about angle measures is those right angles, right? So this can be like this, and I think it's confusing this way because there are these separate pieces. But they're not actually different from each other. What they are, you could put them all together and then have these other 90-degree angles all put together on the other side, which would actually give you, I'm going to write it small, and it's not necessary to do this, but you're actually just going to get this. You have three 90-degree angles, so that's going to be those three angles there. So that means you have a 90-degree angle there. There you go. And then you can figure it out from here. You don't like this question? Oh, come on. Luo, this is a great question. So you can think of it this way, but it's not absolutely necessary. What we need to think about is the angle measure of the shaded regions, which we figure out very quickly is just 90 degrees because we have 360 degrees in total, right? And we're going to subtract the three 90-degree angles, which will leave us with 90 degrees. So we have that 90-degree sector. And we need to figure out, well, if that's 64 pi, then what is the area of the whole circle? 4 times that. That, actually cuts out any absolute need of proportions, but we can figure it out. So we know that we have 90 degrees, and that is the part, right? That's the part we're talking about here, and we want the whole. So part over whole would be 90 over 360. So this is part and degrees. This is whole and also degrees. Then we're going to have what we want, which is the area total. And then we want the part of the area that we have, which is 64 pi. This is just a very slow way to do this. If I see this question on the December SAT, I would probably start to cry. No. Well, I mean, sure, but then get it right, Vix. Here's the thing about these tests. I'm trying my utmost to give you the approach to these questions. What we talked about before, when you see a circle and it doesn't have radii drawn in, you draw in radii yourself because that's very likely what you need to see. In this case, what you need to see is that it's sectors. Now that you have sectors, you know that you're probably going to do proportions. You know the area of the shaded region. But you don't have any other information. So you have to look what other information you have, and it's those right angles. And if you redraw it like this, it becomes very clear, but you don't necessarily have to think of that. You do have to think of, well, these three portions, they don't have to be the same size, but they are what's left over. So you could also find the area of this region, or no, you can't, no. So you have to see what's left over, and that gives you what your sector that's shaded is. You really do have to do that, sorry. Once you get to there, then it starts to show itself. But here you are like this, and then you solve this proportion, or this equation, and you find that the area total is, this is 1/4, and then you can cross multiply, or you can just realize 64 pi is a quarter, so you multiply it by 4, which is what, 240 256 pi, right? So the area, the total area is 256 pi square units. Does this make sense? And more importantly, does the approach to this question make sense? I know I keep repeating myself, but when you see sectors, proportions are where it's at. Sectors with areas and sectors with length of chords. Not chords, sorry, length of, what's that called? Arcs. Wait, I got lost in the end. Where did you find the 256? I just solved, you can solve this once you have the equation, the proportion equation thing set up. Or you can realize that, and you just solve for it. So multiply by A, multiply by, 4, or just realize it's a quarter, so you quadruple it. Either way. Does that make sense, Vix? I won't erase this. Yeah, Lua, you could do that too. Oh, UWorld explained that question in a complex way. Cool. Do you have any general tips for the reading section? Yes, Kizan, I will give you those as I erase stuff. Yeah, I mean, okay, so UWorld is fine. There are a lot of services that don't give great explanations. Honestly, I think the SAT itself doesn't give great explanations. But having a person explain stuff to you is, supremely helpful, obviously. Okay, so Kizan, reading, and anybody else, reading approach stuff. Let's see. So as I start talking about this, what are your issues with the reading section? My general tips are very similar to the other sections. Also, sorry, Kizan. SAT or ACT? SAT. Okay. Yeah, you could do a mind map. That's cool. That'll be good. But I think that's very much specific to each person. But I could do that. I just honestly haven't done it. A little lazy. And now rationalizing. With the reading section, identify the question types. So for studying, you want to identify the question types so that you can identify which ones you need to work on most. And then once you have those, it really, really, really does help, I swear, to know exactly what type of question you're dealing with. And I want to say it's comprehension, but I always think I understood the passage. Okay. So the issue here is that this is an evidence-based test. They both are. So your understanding, of course it's necessary, but I want to say it just doesn't matter all that much. What your focus should be is not on understanding how you're going to interpret the passage, but more importantly on finding evidence. And a lot of the questions actually have the evidence there for you. And another thing is, don't pick the right answer at first. You need to be picking the wrong answers. You need to be picking those out and poking holes in the answer choices. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much you understand the passage, right? What matters is putting the right answers. So that's where your time needs to be spent, is with the answer choices. And the answer choices have problems. 3 of them will always have a problem. So find what that problem is. And it doesn't have to be, and now it can be the content of the question, the real ideas behind it. So if they say something that's just contradictory to what's true in the passage, that's fine. But it might also be that it's irrelevant, which is why the questions are so important. You have to identify the questions very much. And I'm kind of just shooting from the hip here. I'm not sure exactly where the issue lies with your comprehension, but I would say focus on the questions and be very, very, very nitpicky. Any answer you give has to be well documented in the text. So the more that you think, oh, I think I could rationalize why this question is, or why this answer is correct, that you should catch yourself saying, I was just trying to rationalize. Don't do that, because you're taking steps from the text and saying, well, I think that means this, and then I can see how, well, if it is the winter, then it would be cold, and she probably doesn't like cold, so then she hates the winter. But that doesn't, that was an example, but you're taking more and more steps away from the text, and it's an evidence-based test, so you have to find that evidence. What is this stuff? So should I read the questions before reading the passage? You should check that out, see how that is. User Abuser 1. Any method you prefer for going, that's an interesting name, for going through the ACT reading section. Okay, so I have my way that I I wouldn't say that I recommend it for everybody. I recommend it for me, and I recommend that everybody try it if they have an issue with timing or they just have an issue with the reading section in general on either test. What I like to do, I don't read the questions beforehand because I like reading through, because the questions, reading them beforehand, gets me thinking about the questions too soon. I don't want that. What I actually do is I read the passage first and I skim it. And skimming doesn't mean not reading closely. It means finding, for me at least, it means reading the first sentence and reading it very closely and looking for words until I get what's going on, and then I skip several lines. And I circle things, big words, names, dates, things like that. And then if it's a really complicated idea, I mean, you can start practicing by writing what those ideas are down. And every paragraph or two, you have 4, 5, 6 words that you write, and this is the idea here, this is the idea here, and this is the idea here. And then when you get to the questions, you have no idea the real nitty-gritty details of the text. And I think this is more important for the ACT because you have so little time, but it can work for the SAT as well. Once you've skimmed it, you know where everything is, and that's the most important thing for this method, is knowing where answers might lie, because you know the general outline of the passage. And then when you go to the questions, you know where to look, but you haven't wasted a ton of time reading the passage and possibly paying more attention to parts that don't matter. So that's the important thing. You don't want to pay attention to parts that don't matter, so this approach allows you to figure out where things are, and then every question, you go back to the text. You should never answer a question without going back to the text. Never, ever, ever, unless you don't have time, but your approach should allow you time to always do close reading for every single question. So this way, skimming and then having the questions, and you know exactly where to go this time, allows you to only have to read closely for each section once, ideally. That's my approach. Brendan's approach is reading the questions first and then marking the lines where they go, because they often say this line or whatever. You mark those lines so that as you go through, you can answer questions as you go. That messes with my brain somehow, so I don't do that. I'm not recommending that you don't do that. I recommend that you try everything and see what works best for you. Okay. Any method you prefer for going through the... got that. Is it better to rush through the reading than double check, or do it slowly and once? When to use whom? Okay, we can do that too. How long should I take to skim the text? I feel like I'm taking too long to go through the section. User, you are ACT. I would say no more than a minute. If you're skimming, you are only building your sense of where things are, where they might talk about things. So this is where the narrator talks about their love of cars, and this is where they talk about their job that has to do with bikes, and then this is where they talk about their childhood, and this is where they talk about their future. And you know those things, that's all you need. So practice skimming. It shouldn't take you more than a minute and a half, tops. And then you get to the questions. Because a lot of this, especially in the ACT, it might just be hard to find answers, just to find where to go, even if you've read it closely. So don't waste your time. So spend all your time figuring out where you might need to go, and then you're treating it like more of a logic puzzle that way. But try this out. Don't try it for the first time on test day. Not a good idea. Okay, and I would say that you should only be going back and double checking things if they gave you a problem. So do not go through quickly and know that you made mistakes. That's a very bad idea. It's not a bad idea to do the easy questions first. Actually, for both tests, I think the SAT does this a little bit more, is they start with question 1 being, what's the main idea of the passage? Or what is the author's purpose? Don't answer that question first. Do that question last. You should do the detail-oriented questions, the vocab and context questions, the two-part questions on the SAT. Do them first because they tell you where to go, and they're simple. Sometimes the two-part questions can be very hard, but vocab and context for sure, the little detail questions for sure. Do those first. It allows you to work on something small that doesn't require an overall understanding of the passage. You build up your understanding that way, and then you can do those last bigger idea questions at the end. But no, you should not just breeze through and then go back and pick and choose. That's pretty inefficient, I think. We have whom stuff. Whom. Okay. Let's see. I need a new phone. What are your thoughts on not the Pixel, the OnePlus 6T that just came out? I think I'm gonna get that. That's interesting. Vix has got some questions. Okay, I'm going to look at all I want is a thick 36. One, because it sounds like Christmas, and two, because I have no idea what's being said here. Subject not selected at random, and subject... What? Hey, whoever is all I want to thick is a thick 36 in Discord. I'm not exactly sure what your question is with this thing that you posted. I'm also not thinking that hard about it, to be honest, because I don't get it. But I don't know what that question is. Okay. Does anybody have a survey question? Luo, was this a survey question? No, that was not a survey question. Luo, also that last question that... Oh, hey, encryption. I heard it was... Wait, what? Oh, 6T. Right, got it. All right, this is why I forget my questions. Yo, speaking of planned obsolescence, Apple is horrible with that. Well, they're great for themselves. Okay. So, I forget whose question I just did. Well, it was kind of Luo's. We haven't done some VIX stuff in a while. Let's do some VIX stuff. Ooh, that looks like too much work. Ooh, circle question. VIX, we're going to do circle question. For ACT, how do you deal with interpretation questions quickly? I always take too much time on them. Do them last. They are the ones that take the most time. Interpretation inference questions are the hardest and require the most understanding of the passage, so do everything else first. And then from then, I can't give you the general approach is very much prove 3 wrong, see what you are not, because they generally ask, what does this mean, or how does the author mean this, or something like that. You want to, it's very hard to know the right answer. It's much easier, not necessarily easy, but much easier to poke holes in the wrong answer. So that's where you should focus. If this is what the passage says, and this question says this, but they say always in the answer choice, but this doesn't say anything about it always happening, then that's wrong. And so that's the interpretation. So try to find how they misinterpret whatever they're talking about versus trying to interpret it correctly. And then you can work from there. Give me an example and maybe we can do it. Okay. An arc, wait, does it say arc? I'm going to hope it does. An arc of a circle measures 2.4 radians. To the nearest degree, what is the measure in degrees of this arc? Disregard the degree sign when gridding your answer. Okay, so 2.4 radians. And we need to equal x degrees. That's really what we're saying here. I think. I find SAT... Oh my gosh, Brony Choi, no. Than. T-H-A-N. I hope... Well, it's than, not then. Comparison is with than, with an A. Sorry, that upset me. Although people would disagree. It is... Sorry. It's very normal to like the SAT more. It's also very normal to like the ACT more. It just depends on you. I like the SAT's questions more, but not from a test-taking perspective, more from a I like it more. Okay, degrees and radians. Let's think about it. How many radians are in a circle? 2 pi, right? So if there are 2 pi radians in a circle, and there are 360 degrees in a circle, then they equal each other, right? So, proportions. Just like other circle stuff. Proportions and radii, that's kind of what it is all about, and triangles eventually sometimes. So here, 2 pi over 360. That's your whole, right? The whole circle and the whole circle, radians on top, degrees on the bottom. And we can do degrees if we want, doesn't really matter. And then we have 2.4 radians. over x degrees. Well, so the degrees don't matter. And then you solve for x, and that will give you the number of degrees. Ta-da! I don't mean to make it seem trivial, but I do mean to make it clear how it connects to other stuff. Proportions help you. If you're trying to say, what is this thing and this thing, and you know the relationship, here's the basic relationship. So that relationship has to carry over to the 2.4 radians to your degrees. And you solve this. I don't know what it is, but it is that thing. Okay, so are we doing who and whom now? Is that what's happening? Oh my gosh. Luo, I'm just going to tell you straight up that posting so many questions won't help because there are so many questions I still have yet to do of yours that you'll probably have to post them again if you want them answered. Are all SAT radian questions just about writing proportions? I'm not going to say that as a blanket statement, but a lot of them are. So with regards to you recognizing stuff, if you recognize that there are, I would. Radian's not necessarily going to proportions, but sector area and arc length often is proportions. Radian's not necessarily, no. Trig identities often are the same thing just because trig identities, there just aren't that many of them that they test on the SAT or ACT. Difference between hyphens and commas. Okay, well, there are no hyphens on the test, so I assume you mean dashes, and we can talk about that. What? Okay, I don't know if you mistyped that or I just don't understand something, which is totally possible. What is plox? I don't know what that is. Is that please? Does that mean please? So ridiculous. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm learning things. All right. So what are we doing? Dashes versus commas. That's easy. That'll be fun. Okay. I'm going to erase this and go who and whom. So, who is a subject? You would say who rides the bike, right? Because somebody has to be riding the bike for that to be a... Question 19. Oh, sorry. No, I do need to do a VIX question. I think I haven't done that in a while. Sorry, Luo. No, I just did a VIX question, didn't I? Wasn't that a VIX question? Where's 19? VIX. Oh, here we go. Got it. I don't know how I missed that. I'm going to do who and whom, and then I'm going to do... Do you mind terribly, Vix, if I do who and whom, and then I do 19? Is that okay? Is that okay? Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you want to help Vix out, ideally just like a PM, so it's not cluttering up the chat too much. Okay, or do it there. As long as it's not too long. Okay, what are we doing? Who and whom? Oh, I get it. I didn't even realize that. Okay. Who and whom? Who and whom? This is an object. This is a subject. So, with an object versus a subject, which may or may not help you, this is also wrong. Oh my gosh. That's just, I wrote exactly the wrong thing. Subject. Object. This is the subject of a sentence. So you can say, who rides the bike? Or who talks to Levi? Who? Oh my gosh! What's wrong with me? You guys gotta point this out. Who talks to Levi? Here's your verb, right? Who's doing the verb? Who, in this case. This is your subject, right? And you need a subject and verb. So that's the important part. When you're dealing with sentences and you're figuring out who versus whom, you have to figure out what part of speech should it be. Should it be a subject? Do you need that thing? Does this thing do the verb that is active in the sentence? If it does, great, it should be who. If it doesn't, it should be whom. So who talks to Levi? Now, if we're not sure who, or if we're not sure about the person, even explaining this will give away the answer, but this is going to be whom. Because this is the object of the sentence. It's not doing the verb. The verb is being done to it. So therefore, it's going to be whom. It's the object. And the way to make this a little bit simpler is to think of who as he and she, I guess. You can do either. I like this because when you get to the object of it, it's going to be him. So the M and the M work, and that's how I remember it. And then it also works with they and them. We have the M's in them and him. It goes with the whom. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because if you replace what you're trying to replace with him and them versus he and they, whichever one sounds better will be who. That's which one you choose for who and whom. What I mean by that is if we were saying this is still going to be Levi and this is going to be a blank, and we're trying to figure out if it should be who or whom. So we have blank talks to Levi. Would you say he talks to Levi? Or would you say him talks to Levi? Well, obviously he, right? You would definitely say he talks to Levi versus him talks to Levi. It sounds really bad. So this is basically an approach that allows you to use your gut feeling a little bit more easily because who and whom aren't as commonly used and can get confusing. Use he and they versus him and them. If you got the M in your answer, then it should be whom. So in this case, it's he, so it'll be whom, or who. But then here, if we don't have Levi, we say that, let's say that Levi, say this is Levi here. So Levi talks to blank. Would it be Levi talks to he, or would it be Levi talks to him? Definitely be Levi talks to him, or Levi talks to them, so it would be whom. Does that make sense? Can you also turn the sentence into a question and figure it out like that? Yes. In this case, this is a question. If it's a question and it's confusing you and it's got the inversion, so let's say that it says to blank does he speak. This might be a little bit confusing because you don't, would you say to him does he speak or to he does he speak? It might get confusing. So if there's a question that you're trying to fill in with these things that gets confusing, answer the question. So to blank does he speak? Well, to answer that, you'd say he speaks to him, right? So it would be him. You wouldn't say he speaks to he. So therefore, you'd put him. Therefore, it would be whom. So however you need to invert the sentence or mess with it, as long as the idea of it is still the same and the subjects are in the same place, you can mess with the sentence a little bit. So that was a good question, Kizin. Okay, I'm not exactly sure what happened with Vix's question, but I'm going to do 19 now. Unless you want 36, which yeah. I mean, we can do 36. It just doesn't sound that fun. Doesn't look that fun. I like long English questions and short math questions that lend themselves to general approach stuff. How much time do we have? Oh, not that long. We have 10 minutes. Okay. We should have time for the dashes and the commas. If you're still here, Encryption. Are you still here? Encryption, are you done with the tests, though? Are you done with the tests? Or are you just hanging out? Also, Encryption, you do need to raise your hand at some point, because I'm not going to answer your question if you're not still here. Just so as you know, maybe I'll do one more Luo question or something like that. If nobody else has a question that they need to ask. Okay. All right. Now, we are doing Vix's question number 19. Sorry, Vix. Is this going to be annoying? It looks like it's going to be annoying. The table above, which I'm about to draw, shows two pairs of values for the linear function f. Great. X, f of x. We have 8, 12, 12, 17. 8, 12, 12, 17. And this is for the function f. That makes sense. So you plug in 8 for x, you get y equals 12. The function can be written in the form f of x equals ax plus b. Great, so just here we have a linear function. Oh, that's a bummer, Luo. Well, after the fact, you could watch it later, I guess. Sorry about that. I do know your pain. Where a and b are constants, what is the value of a plus b? Is this just an open-ended question? What is the value of a plus b? Oh, this is kind of cool. Alright, this is hard, also. Oh, hey, is anybody else having trouble, or is it just Luo? Because I hope it's not the stream itself. Might be, though. So we want, what does a plus b equal? So this is hard because of the way they asked it, I think, mainly. Thank you for letting me know, guys. If they just said, what is a, just find a, and find b, what would you do? Okay. We have a couple of things here. We're trying to solve for a and b, but we have x and f of x values. So what we're actually going to need to do here, and this is, it took me a minute to get here, so I can't expect you to know this, and it's hard, but it does make sense, and honestly, you will just, you'll understand why I'm doing it. But we know that this equation is satisfied by those values, right? So that means the equation has to work if we plug in those values. So that means we're going to plug them in. We have f of x equals ax plus b. So that means we have 12 equals a times 8 plus b. We also know that the next one is true, which is 17 equals a times 12 plus b. Therefore, we have a system of equations where we can solve for a and b, because we have two variables. They're actually constants, but we're trying to figure out what they are. So two variables and two equations, which means we can do exactly what we need to do here. So we're solving this system, and I'm going to rewrite these because I don't like that. No, doesn't really matter too much. Let's solve for b and then plug it in. So we know that from this one we have b equals 12 minus 8a. So we'll plug that in here, and we have 17 equals 12a plus b, which is 12 minus 8a. So now we're going to subtract 12 from both sides. We have 5 equals 4a. We have a equals 5/4. Let me just make sure I didn't mess anything up here. So here's one thing, is a equals 5/4. I hope I didn't make that unreadable now. We subtract 12, we get 5. Yeah, that works. So a is 5/4. You plug it back in to find b. You add a and b together to find the answer to this question. Vix, does that make sense? Because this is hard. This is very, very hard and very confusing. And now I understand that Lamau Boy made no sense before. But now maybe it does. 5/4 is going to be 10, 2. Yes, so b is 2. So it'll be 2 plus 5/4. Great. Okay, so the important thing is, I mean, this is hard. It took me like a solid 10, 15 seconds or something. We have this equation, and there are essentially four variables. F of x, or y, a, x, and b, and we only have one equation, so we have to use this somehow. It's not the easiest thing to jump to, but you do have to plug in, make a system. I don't know what you're talking about, Luo. I don't know how triangles factor in, but maybe I'm missing something. Entirely possible. Okay. Oh, triangle as in delta. Got it. Okay, change in y over change in x. Yes, that would help. That would be one way to solve for A in this case, and then you can solve for B. But then you still have to plug into that. Yeah. So it's still important to realize that you have to plug in. But yes, that's an interesting way to do that. That did not occur to me. Okay. Commas versus dashes. Wait, encryption, are you here? Encryption, say hello, otherwise I'm not going to do your question. No encryption. Okay. It's about 9:30, so I'm not going to do that. Maybe I'll look for something short that Luo posted. Unless, does anybody have just general questions? We can do more Luo stuff. I mean, this is basically Luo's stream with other people's questions sprinkled in, which is fine. I don't mind. Yeah, nothing new, super new. Yeah, you guys need help with those survey questions. It's not that they're crazy challenging necessarily. It's that you just don't see them in high school. So honestly, the algebra that you guys do is significantly harder, I think, than those survey questions. But you don't do them ever. So when you see them on the test, they're stressful. We can do, I mean, I could make up survey questions, but that's just a lot of time. Not going to happen now, for sure. Okay, any other general questions about stuff? Okay, yeah. Yeah. Kizen, thank you for the sub. I appreciate that very much. Yeah, that's awesome. Really appreciate that. Yeah, I think you've subscribed before. I think this might not be the first time you subbed, but I don't quite remember. Well, I sort of remember you subbing. Oh, it is a first. Well, thank you. I really well, they're not here, but we appreciate it for sure. Spread this to everybody. We're trying to help, so just do that. It's good. It's good. Yeah, you can post the survey question. I'm not going to do it now because it's now 9:30. Let's see. Today is Monday. I think we'll probably do Thursday, Friday cram sessions for the SAT, or is it ACT? I think it's ACT this weekend, right? Yeah. Yeah. ACT this weekend. So we're going to do some ACT cram session stuff probably Thursday, Friday. I'll put that in the calendar. I wasn't sure that the stream would work. Oh, SAT is this weekend? Are you sure? Oh, yeah, I'm sure you're right. Whatever. I'm not going to check your facts. Look at me. Okay. Have a good night, everybody. I will see you tomorrow. It seems like the internet is working well. It's okay. And I hope it keeps working. And I would love to keep doing this the way we were, from 3 weeks ago. Is my voice that white noise-ish? I'm not offended. Well, no, I'm not offended. But it's interesting white noise. It's at some point, Dalt, if you keep doing that, I'm gonna just start whispering your name or something. I don't know. Do something weird. Not that weird. Not too weird, at least. We'll have Brady do something. Maybe some ASMR whispering at the microphone. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Have a good night, everybody, and I will see you. I probably won't see you tomorrow, but I think Brendan. Nope. Brady should. I'm not. No, Brendan would get so mad at me if I started an ASMR channel. Why can't you sub? I don't know. The thing with the ASMR stuff is that I would put myself to sleep. Because oh, it's awesome. But that's not going to work. We know that's not going to work. Thank you. Yes, I'm going to listen to Bonnie Choi. Good night, everybody. See you tomorrow. Or, no, I won't. We already did this. Good night.